Halloween 2 by Jack Martin. Chapter 4. Several blocks away, an ambulance screamed up to the Doyle house. Inside, Lori heard it. She concentrated on it. She was trying to keep the dream from coming. Then hands were lifting her from where she lay on the second floor. She could not feel them. She had not felt anything since the first knife slash across her shoulder. Through that special grace by which the human nervous system survives times of great crisis, she had been granted the gift of non-feeling. It was this absence of pain which now kept her from passing out. She knew the crisis was over. She had seen him driven away from her and off the second-story balcony by a burst of gunfire, louder than anything she had ever heard before. He had fallen, finally, in a hell of bullets. She had actually seen them tear into his chest, the gouts of blood squeezing out. It was over. Why, then, couldn't she feel anything now? It was over, wasn't it? "Don't let them put me to sleep," she said. She realized what she was saying. She knew. More than the ambulance attendants, more even than the tall policeman. Some part of her knew the real truth, even if she could not make sense of it. And still the dream tried to come. "It's okay, miss." Eyes were watching her. Curious neighbors. Vaguely familiar faces rubbernecking as she was carried down the steps. "Now I know what it's like to be on a stretcher," she thought. "I always figured it would be peaceful. Nothing to worry about. Doctors to take care of you. Only it's not." Did she see his eyes there? Just there at the edge of the crowd. Voices. "Where's Brackett?" "Brackett'll take care of it." "Where is he?" "All right, folks, let's give him room, please." "Don't let them," she said. "Okay, it's okay." She tried to sit up, but the straps held her, just under her chest. The blanket that covered her body was bleeding through in red splotches. No, it was only the reflection of those goofy spinning light bulbs on top of the police cars. She felt herself dropping, then rising, as the gurney legs scissored opened under her. She heard what sounded like drips of blood as wheels clicked over the pavement. The stars circled above her. Then the doors of the ambulance opened and she was shunted inside. The doors shut, and now she could hear only the idling of the motor through the steel compartment. She wanted to reach out and steady herself as the ambulance started to move, but her arms wouldn't work right. They were held to her sides. It was like being buried alive. Her mouth worked thickly, though she couldn't feel her lips. Don't let them put me to sleep." "It's okay. It's okay. It's okay." "Don't let them. Promise." "I promise. Now try to get some rest." A young man sat down next to her, over her. He had on a blue jacket with a white patch. A name was stitched there in blue thread. Jimmy. Talk to me, Jimmy," she said weakly. Her voice sounded hollow in her ears, as though she were in a cave. "What do you want to talk about?" She concentrated on his face. It would help her to keep from passing out. It was a good face, with nice features. He had curly black hair. She held to him with her eyes. His face was real, with so much expression. A sensitive face, like Ben Tramer, a little, not like... "I don't know, just don't let them... Don't let them... Nobody's gonna hurt you, I promise." "Don't leave me. I mean, can you stay with me wherever they're going to?" He was her age, or older, maybe 18 or 19. She wanted to think only of him, of what she could see in front of her right now, not other things. He must have graduated already, she thought. I never saw him before. I don't think I did. I would have noticed. The ambulance yawed and the gurney rolled a few inches, then locked into place. Jimmy put out a hand to hold it steady. Behind her head, the voice of the driver. "Hey, you know this chick?" "Yeah, her name's Lori Strode." Jimmy's voice. She wondered if the driver knew she could hear them. Probably he didn't care. But somebody cared. Jimmy cared. She tried to keep that thought. "She goes to school with my little brother Ziggy." "Her old man, Strode Realty?" "Yeah." "Oh, okay. That means old Bud don't let up on the hammer." The ambulance accelerated. "Don't worry," said Jimmy. "He does the same for all the girls." He was grinning manfully. "I'm not worried about that. Just don't let them put me to sleep." The siren started up. It jolted her. She felt it tingle through her body like an electric shock. With it came pain, pain she could feel, needles and pins. Memory returned to her too. It started to wash over her in waves like her pulse, like the dream, trying to get inside of her. "Oh," she said. "Don't think about it," he said. He meant the way her body felt. He didn't understand. Or did he? Maybe that was the best advice he could give. What I need to hear. Don't think about any of it. What happened tonight and the other before. Don't think. "Okay," she said. She trusted him. The siren screamed. Outside the ambulance, flashing lights that swam past like phosphorescent fish, then darkness again, overlaid with the filtered color that is found nowhere in nature. The sodium vapor lights of the hospital parking lot. No one touched her, only the stretcher. The doors of the van opened like metal wings. She raised her head a few inches as they lowered the gurney and wheeled her toward the emergency entrance. Beyond the yellow blankets over her toes, she saw red lights blinking like drops of luminous blood in the glass doors. But they were only reflections from atop the ambulance. She knew she had to remain conscious. To her left, the dark, polished tops of cars parked under the Haddonfield Memorial Hospital sign. To her right, a '57 Chevy. Next to the Chevy, a dark car door opened and a shape emerged. She tensed up. But it was only a pirate. Only a pirate, she thought. Yes, why not? It was Halloween. I guess anything is possible tonight. There shouldn't be such a thing as Halloween. It's bad for kids, evil. They don't know that. They think the same as I did. They think it's fun. I'll tell them the truth when I get out of here. I'll make them listen. I should have remembered. I should have... But she didn't want to remember, not now. She wasn't ready for it. The pirate got out of the dark car and leaned on the '57 Chevy. He had a red bandana around his head and a towel. He was holding a towel to his face. "Okay, just get out easy," Lori heard a woman saying, the pirate's mother. "It'll be okay, just walk slow, okay, honey?" The towel fell away from the boy's face. Tears were streaming down his cheeks and blood was percolating out of his open mouth. "All right, you okay, hon? God, oh God." The mother's face twisted as she walked him slowly forward. "Here, just put it up there real gently. Just walk real slow. Come on." The little boy was led forward. He was hunched over like an old man. See, thought Lori, look what Halloween did to him. Then her stretcher was wheeled ahead and up the ramp. Inside, the emergency receiving room was bright and reassuring. There was nothing in here that didn't show, Lori was sure. The lights made her head ache. She forced her eyes to stay open. The doors closed behind her. "Jill, where's Dr. Mixter?" snapped Jimmy. His voice was soft but urgent. "Ah," said the nurse behind the desk, caught off guard. She was trying to concoct an excuse. She gave up. "He's been at the country club. I think he's drunk." "Great." That was Bud, the driver. He sounded genuinely angry. They do care about me, Lori told herself. Finally, somebody does. I'm going to be all right now, I know it. "What you got?" asked Jill, coming around from behind the reception counter. "Stab wound," said Bud. "Left anterior chest, possibly penetrating, multiple contusions." The door opened. Lori craned her neck. It was the little boy, the pirate, and his mother. The towel had not stopped the bleeding. With each step, another drop hit the floor. Jill intercepted them, affording the boy only a cursory appraisal, as if she had seen a lot worse already tonight. I'm sure she has, thought Lori, but that little boy is so handsome, his... "Fill out this form," said Jill to the mother. "Someone will be with you in a moment." "Oh, but we should see a doctor right away." "He's with the patient. Would you please wait in room A?" The mother steered her boy to a seat. "Come on, honey." She removed the towel. "Thank you," Lori heard her say ironically. Then Lori was moving again. As she was wheeled into an examination room, she caught a glimpse of the boy, seated but still hunched over now, without the towel. His mouth was open. He could not close it because of the double-edged razor blade wedged against the roof of his mouth. We also serve, she thought, who were too old for candy. The sight shocked her fully awake. Her nerves were alive again now, her senses heightened. She heard a muffled bell ringing somewhere. Voices from all directions, the clatter of a tray, the whirring of a floor polisher in another corridor. The lights were brighter, as she was lifted onto an examination table. The pattern of the ceiling's acoustic tiles burned into her eyes. She could feel her shoulder now. It screamed to be left where it was. Another voice. "It's Laurie Strode." Yeah, Janet," said Bud gruffly. Come on, let's go." A new voice, weary, but deep and authoritative. "Janet, give me some coffee." Footsteps going away, new footsteps coming in. A doctor leaned over her. His eyes were red, as if they had seen too much, but he did not flinch. His breath smelled of bourbon. "Well, let's see what we have here." He even tried to smile down at her. "Ah, yes, you've lost a lot of blood. We'll need to type it." A young nurse joined him, holding a syringe. She had a plastic pumpkin on her uniform lapel. Laurie stared at it. The needle felt like a bee sting. "When was the last time you had a tetanus shot?" asked the doctor. "I don't know," was all Laurie could tell him. She was trying, but remembering was way too much. "Get me some 3/0 nylon and a cutting needle?" "Yeah." "Right away." There was an older nurse. Her face was bland but determined, like a mother who knew her duty. Laurie felt better seeing her with the doctor. She left. Laurie hoped they would not both leave her. "We're going to have to put her out." "No, don't put me to sleep." They began to cut away her blood-stained blue blouse. She saw eyes trained on her, the ambulance driver and the other one, Jimmy. "No, no." "Get them out of here," said the older nurse, returning. "Take it easy." The doctor inserted another needle. Blood filled the syringe. The red line moved up and up, as if it would never stop. "No," repeated Laurie, but her throat was dry, and her voice merely a whisper. She had difficulty hearing it herself. "Don't let them put me out." "Try to relax, Laurie," came the optimistic voice of the nurse with the pumpkin. Jill said her name badge. "Dr. Mixter will have you stitched up in no time." Repeating for those of you who just tuned in, 3 people are dead tonight as the result of an attack by an escaped mental patient. I understand we're going to stay on the air now. Any further details will be forthcoming as soon as we get them. This is Robert Mundy. Jimmy and the blonde nurse, Jill, sat listlessly in front of the TV set. Jimmy got up and left the staff lounge. In the hallway, Dr. Mixter and the head nurse, Mrs. Alves, stood talking in low tones outside a room. "And keep checking her," the doctor was saying. "She ought to be coming around any time now. Where's Janet?" "She went to the cafeteria. She's on her break." "Her break? There are no breaks tonight. Did she call Laurie's parents?" "She tried. I can try again if—" "Wait," said the doctor, slapping his forehead. "They were at the party. Probably still there." The doctor and head nurse hurried off. Jimmy waited till they were out of the corridor. Then he smoothed his hair and stepped up to the door. Inside it was dim. There was a shape on the bed, and Jimmy opened the door carefully. The door hardly made a sound, but as soon as it opened, Laurie's head rolled to the side. Her hair was spread across the pillowcase like fine silk. Incredibly, it shone, even in the moonlight coming through the blinds. Her eyes swam up to meet his. "Hi," she said. Her lips remained open. She was passive, waiting for him to say something. Before he could speak, the door opened again behind him. A silhouetted shape stood there, a white shape. Mrs. Alves stepped inside. "Jimmy, leave her alone." Mrs. Alves' voice was restrained but commanding. To the figure on the bed, she said, "How are you feeling?" "I feel sore," Laurie said. Her voice was barely a whisper, her energy completely drained. She moved her tongue laboriously over her dry lips. "What happened?" "Cracked a bone," said Mrs. Alves, adjusting the dressing on Laurie's leg. The stethoscope around her neck swung like a snake with a silver head. "Lucky it wasn't a break. The doctor thinks we should wait until tomorrow before we put a cast on." She withdrew to the door. "See you tomorrow. Come along, Jimmy." Mrs. Alves closed the chart and went out to continue on her rounds. Jimmy kept looking at Laurie. "Can I get you something to drink?" he whispered. "Or anything?" "Uh-huh." "How about a Coke?" Lori nodded. "Okay." "Thanks." Her eyes stayed on his without blinking. "Okay," said Jimmy again, grinning foolishly. Bud stuck his head in. "Come on, Jimmy, we gotta roll. Another call just came in." Jimmy turned reluctantly, then turned back to the girl on the bed. "I'll get you that Coke later." Mrs. Alves touched their shoulders. "Out!" On their way out of the building, Jimmy saw the mother and son walking slowly back across the parking lot. He was still hunched over and holding the wadded towel under his chin, but now at least his mouth was closed. "Does it hurt?" the mother was saying. "It hurts, doesn't it?" "My mouth is on fire," said the boy pitifully. "What, honey?" "Mouth is on fire." "Your mouth is on fire. I know, honey, I know. Oh, damn those sick, sick people for doing that to you kids. I should have checked your candy first. I'll tell the other mothers. Gary, you've got to remember what house it was. I'm going to the police. They'll get him, don't you worry. And when they do, I hope they burn him good." Moments ago, police reported that Michael Myers, formerly of Haddonfield, who fled the Smiths Grove Warren County Sanitarium last night, was believed to have burned to death. Meanwhile, 3 bodies were discovered in the upstairs bedroom of the house directly behind me. Identification of the victims is being withheld, pending notification of the... Farther along the sidewalk out of camera range, a woman with a clipboard glanced along the block, at the lights and portable cameras in front of the Wallace house. Neighbors were clustered on the lawn, some in bathrobes, leaning closer together for warmth and information. Their faces were blank, uncomprehending, as if they had wandered by accident onto the set of a movie being acted out in a foreign language. Several children in costumes sat beneath the tree eating candy. The producer pointed at them with a pencil. "Forget Monday for the next segment. I want to concentrate on the house. Talk to some kids. See if anybody saw anything." "Got it, Deb," said a young man in a jacket liner. He checked a stopwatch and made a note. "You need their parents' permission to use a statement. If you can't find the parents, get a statement anyway." She went to her cameraman and slipped inside the cables that connected him to the portable video unit. She screwed one eye shut and peered through the viewfinder. The Wallace house, all the lights on inside now. A pumpkin on the porch, its color washed out in the glare. Uniformed police and ambulance attendants wheeling another sheeted form out the front door. The sound of car doors slamming, the sounds of cars driving by. She panned to the right. It was Sheriff Brackett, accompanied by a beefy deputy and a smallish balding man in a trench coat. "Move in," said the producer. "Follow them, especially the bird dog in the coat. He might be a lawyer, doctor, something. I bet he's the one who knows what's really going on here." The camera zoomed in. "Not now," said the deputy as the producer closed the distance. He held out his arms to open a path for the sheriff. Then, with great reluctance, he lifted a brown-stained sheet from the stretcher. Brackett stood very still. A vein stood out on his neck. He shut his eyes, took a breath, opened his eyes. It was true. Annie Brackett's head was centered perfectly on the pillow. Her dark curly hair was attractively tasseled. Only this time, the hair at her forehead was stiff and caked, matted. Her pretty face was empty and without expression. Her throat had been cut in a brown line from ear to ear. A few thin vertical striations had dried on her neck and the collar of her blouse. She almost looked as if she had fallen peacefully asleep, with her eyes open. A flash bulb went off, catching her hair in a nimbus around her head. Brackett said nothing. He leaned over her, directly over the stretcher, until his eyes locked with hers. Then very slowly, so slowly you could hear the joints crack in his fingers, he reached down and shuddered his hand over her face, closing her eyes forever. He nodded to Hunt, the deputy. Hunt dropped the sheet. Hunt looked at him grimly, a bit fearfully. Brackett cleared his throat. I have to go tell my wife before somebody else does." Hunt let Jimmy and Bud carry the stretcher away. "Go on home, Lee," said Hunt to the sheriff. Go on home. I'll take care of everything." Brackett turned his eyes on Loomis then. They were black and smoldering. He straightened his massive shoulders. "Damn you!" "I'm sorry," began Loomis. "What have you done?" Loomis attempted to explain. "I haven't done anything." "You let him out!" The sheriff's growling voice rose to a howl. Hunt touched his shoulder, and the sheriff snapped out of it. He went back to the car before he could say or do anything else. His large hands were balled into fists at his sides. "I didn't let him out," Loomis explained uselessly to Hunt, to himself. "I gave orders for him to be restrained." 2 more sheeted bodies were rolled out of the house, down the walkway and past them. Hunt watched them being loaded away. Flashing police lights reddened his face. "Now, is there anything else we can do for you?" he said to Loomis. "If that wasn't Michael Myers burning up in that car," said Loomis, no longer concerned about sounding reasonable, "then a lot of other kids are going to be slaughtered tonight." The words caught in his throat, words that were thoughts, thoughts that were feelings. They made his voice break. Hunt cut him off. "He's dead. I saw him." "You saw a man with a mask," Loomis explained. "It was him." "I want to believe you." That, thought Loomis, is the truth. "But I've got to be sure. I cannot stop until I'm certain he's dead." Now that the sheriff was gone, a cameraman moved in on them. "You're talking about him like he's some kind of animal," said Hunt. "He was." "Will you keep them back?" Hunt noticed the camera and motioned for assistance. Loomis stared past Hunt into the pumpkin on the porch, lost in its eyes. "He was my patient for 15 years, he said. "He became an obsession with me until I realized that there was nothing within him, neither conscience nor reason, that was even remotely human. An hour ago I stood up and fired 6 shots into him. He just got up and walked away." He moved in front of Hunt and grabbed his attention. Perhaps if this man would listen, if Brackett wouldn't, maybe his deputy would. "I'm talking about the real possibility that he is still out there." Hunt's face and eyes were as blank as a mannequin's. He was waiting for the doctor to finish, not so that he could believe him, but so that he could figure out what to do about this out-of-town official who had been sent here to give orders which even the sheriff obeyed, albeit reluctantly. Hunt had that non-expression of a man who is paid not to think. He was probably just now reassessing the authority which had been given to a doctor who specializes in the criminally insane. "It takes one to know one," his eyes said, "but I sure wish I didn't have to listen to you." "Where did they take the body?" said Loomis. "Coroner's office." That's right, thought Loomis. Nothing but the facts. But as a matter of fact, that much might prove sufficient for now. "Get a dentist to meet me there in half an hour," he instructed Hunt, and did not wait to argue. Loomis glided away over the wet lawn, turning inward once more. The street, the police, the reporters grew vague and tenuous behind him in the mist. None of this matters, he thought. What is here and now has been here before and will surely be here again, unless I can do something to prevent its reoccurrence. The only permanence is the light eternally in conflict with the darkness. And the darkness still survives. Think, he told himself. He had waited. When the time came, by whatever method he measured it, he found the means to return. He has armed himself. He is killed, and he will go on killing, unless... When will it be enough for him? What is the final satisfaction he seeks? Try to remember it all. You might be forgetting something, some small but crucial detail from his past, which might save all our souls now, in the hour of our need. Think! His face began to twitch involuntarily. It was a dream. He couldn't shake it. It was as if he had awakened to find himself trapped inside a nightmare from which there was no escape. The light came on. The producer's eyes were bloodshot. It was way past time to wrap. Crowds are milling around and the police have cordoned off the entire area. To repeat, 3 youths have been found murdered at 3250 Woodbine Street in the northwest section of Haddonfield. Directly across the street, another teenage girl was found alive. She was evidently attacked by the same suspect. The producer wove through the crowd and ended up back at the camera truck. The portable lights were emitting fine trails of steam that drifted upward and dissipated into the night sky, tracing a wispy path like the Milky Way through the stars. She pointed to her watch. Mundy did not see her. Police put out an all-points bulletin with the description of the assailant. Blockades have been established at all of the main arteries in town, and Detective Gary Hunt of the Haddonfield Police Department feels that the suspect will be captured within a matter of hours. He was staring hypnotically into the lens. He appeared to be absorbed in a kind of onanistic communion with the crystal eye of the camera. It was eerie, almost as if he saw or believed he could see the good people of Haddonfield growing drowsy in their darkened living rooms, hanging on his every word in an unholy electronic seance. Not since that night 15 years ago, when young Michael Myers tragically murdered his sister, can the town of Haddonfield recall such a night of infamy. The producer exchanged glances with her assistant. "The camera loves him, Deb," said the assistant. "Well, he thinks so," said the producer. "He's making ratings history tonight, that's for sure. Listen to him. Smooth as hammered shit. Monday magic." "You think that's why?" She leaned in next to the camera and tried in vain to catch the announcer's eye. But Mundy's syrupy voice just droned on. "There's nothing else on the tube tonight except old movies. Most people are still hoping their kids come home. What are they supposed to do, wait for the morning paper?" "Word gets around fast when there's a murder in a burg like this. I hear the station switchboard's tied up with calls." The producer waved. Mundy ignored her. "Poor schmucks," she said. "They should lock their doors and leave it to the pros. Nothing else is going to happen tonight. He's done his dirty work, whoever he is. Probably laid up on Skid Row by now, sleeping it off." "Yeah, but you can't blame them. What about the kids?" "I wouldn't let my kids out on a night like this," she said, "if I had any kids, which is about as likely as rocking horse shit. Too many weirdos out there. Christ, this whole town's a mausoleum. They have to tie tin cans to their puppy dogs' tails for excitement, you know. I'm not kidding." "You want to wrap it and go to bed?" "Define your terms," said the producer. The assistant smiled hopefully. "Wrap it up here as soon as you can," she said. "As soon as old Blue Eyes falls out of love with himself for a beat." "And then?" "Then you and the crew get your tails over to the hospital. This story's the biggest thing to hit Haddonfield since Stoddard's store stopped carrying Hustler." "Bucking for an Emmy there, boss?" "I'm bucking for a way out of this chicken outfit, Barry. By whatever means it takes. If sleazy sex murders will do it for me, then bring on the blood and guts, just as long as it's not my blood and my guts." She reached out and put her hand over the red light on top of the camera in a last bid to get the newsman's attention. The assistant cocked an eye at her. "You haven't lived here very long," he said. "You didn't grow up here. You don't know these people like I do. If it was your friends that got off tonight—" "Spare me," she said, preoccupied. "Barry, don't you know better than to believe everything news people say, even me? Lighten up. I'm only protecting my image. I've really got the heart of a sweet, innocent little girl." The assistant smirked. "Where, boss? In a jar on your mantel?" "Actually, it's in the kitchen. I use it as a doorstop." She found a blank cue card and a grease pencil and wrote ID on it and held it below the camera. "In the aftermath of the killings, the streets between Chestnut and 10th are jammed with people and cars. Repeating that, these streets are Chestnut and 10th. They're just jammed with both people and cars." The producer held up her index finger. She waved it until Mundy could not help but notice. Then she took her finger and slashed it across her throat, from ear to ear with finality. She made a gagging expression, her tongue hanging out. "We now return you to our regularly scheduled programming," said Mundy. "Until then, please stay tuned for further "Cut already!" yelled the producer. Okay, Slashaholics, this has been Chapter 4 of Halloween 2 by Jack Martin. Hope you're enjoying it so far. Not a whole lot of action in tonight's chapter, but some good story, moving it along. We got Laurie set up in the hospital. We know everything that's about to go down there. I'm curious to see what things Jack Martin toys with the story from the movie, and I have a feeling he's going to do quite a bit of it, and I'm looking forward to that when the shit hits the fan. Anyways, guys, let me know in the comments section what you think of the book so far, what you thought of tonight's chapter, and I'll be back very soon with more of Halloween 2, the novelization by Jack Martin. As always, tonight's upload was brought to you by the patrons on the Patreon page. We got 7 of them currently. That's Catherine McClear, Carl Eakins, Sean Campbell, Cecilia Spears, Hawaii, Iron Alexa, and Allison Side. Thank you guys for supporting the channel on Patreon. And if anybody listening right now would like to help the channel, keep it going and growing for years to come, and help make sure that I'm able to get every single horror slasher out-of-print book available here on the channel in audio form, click the link in the description below for the Patreon page. You can sign up for as low as $2 to $5 per month. Because of the copyright owners getting the ad revenue from this channel, I'm not able to make any money to fund the channel, so I do depend on listeners like you to sign up through Patreon to help keep this channel growing and going. So please take the time, check out the Patreon page. You get some early access to certain slasher books way before YouTube does, and you get some great rewards depending on your tier. So check it out, please. Hope to see you on the Patreon page. And until next time, guys, this has been your friendly neighborhood 80s slasher librarian saying, thank you for listening. I love you all. Have a great